Right, so today we're going to be transforming this area of my studio into a film set because I'm going to be shooting a visual story. Now, this visual story is inspired by Kyle Nutt, so if you see some direct correlations, it's very inspired by him. And if you don't know who that is, links are going to be in the description, but he's a super talented filmmaker who makes these beautiful short films that seem so simple, but they're so well done, making these sort of social commentaries. And I was inspired by that and the fact that I want to be testing out this new filter I got, which is the Walking Way Retro Soft filter. So today I'm going to be doing a full breakdown on how I shoot this little visual story, from how I'm setting up my lights, why I'm making those decisions, to how I frame my shots, to also seeing if I still remember how to act, because I haven't done acting in drama since basically first year of university. So let's see if I still got it. So we're about to go for the very first shot of the shoot, but before we do, let me break down what we've dialed in, talk about the technical side of things. Without giving the concept of the film away just yet, basically, I wanted the scene to feel very warm, very cozy, very moody. So that's the first thing I keep in mind when approaching my lighting. What is the mood? The second thing I think about is where's the light gonna come from? Because light doesn't just appear out of nowhere going like, hey, 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 it's me, light. It has a reason, right?
So for this specific scene, the motivation for our whole lighting setup is this light fixture over here, which is giving us this warm, rich light. However, it's not very strong, so we have to augment that light, and we're using a P2C that I have color balanced to match that light source. Anyway, before we start rolling, let me break down exactly the camera setup that we're using and also the camera settings, because if you mess up your camera settings and you underexpose, your image is gonna look like rubbish. So let's look at the camera setup. We're gonna be using the Canon R5C, which is my baby. I'm gonna be using predominantly the 24-70, but we're also gonna be using the Sigma 85mm with some extension tubes. In terms of filtration, I'm not doing anything outside of the Walking Way Retro Soft Film filter because I wanted to test that one cleanly. Now, what we have is the camera dialed into 2800 Kelvin, and then we've added +6 magenta. And that is because, to be completely honest with you guys, the Walking Way Retro Soft Film filter has a very heavy effect. And I like it, but for this specific scene, I didn't need it to be so intense. So I've used my white balancing and my camera settings to tone it down. I was about to go for the take, but this light is spreading a little bit too much. So what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna put a honeycomb on this, and that's just gonna help give a bit more direction to the light without overspilling and making this whole area feel completely overblown. Right, so we've just locked in the first shot and we've got a few others to go, but before we jump into those, let me quickly give you a brief understanding of what the story is going to be. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, this film is inspired by Kyle Nutt, specifically the way he always makes these videos about, like, in the old days, we would play video games surrounded by friends. Now, modern days, everyone's super detached and it's no longer this communal thing. That sort of message. And that's what inspired me to make this video. I wanted to look at how in the old days when we would like play music specifically, there'd be a lot more care. You'd have to look through your vinyl section, you'd have to load it in, and then make a contrasting scene about how in modern times we're being bombarded by all of this stimulus. So understanding this is how I approach all of my filmmaking. I basically look at the general message of the film, but then I take it scene by scene. What are we trying to convey with the scene? So here, I want to show intentionality. So a lot of our shots are going to be close-ups of me pulling out the record player, putting it down, setting down the vinyl player head thing. I don't know what that's called. And the reason why we're using close-ups is because by showing things up close, we're making them seem more important. We're drawing focus to that specific item or action. And Alfred Hitchcock has a fantastic quote that basically says, the size of the object inside of the frame is directly proportional to the size of its importance in the story, or at least it should be. For now, let's get these close-ups locked and loaded. Moving. Cool, we're gonna bring that light in a little bit closer. Right, so we've just finished shooting all the close-ups that are low to the ground and on the record player, and we just shot one of the most beautiful close-ups of this record player with a bit of a highlight streak hitting. Chef's kiss, really. And I think it's only taken us about like maybe 30-ish minutes. One of the reasons why that's been able to work out is because of how simple this lighting setup, but how practical it is. Especially when you're shooting by yourself or with a smaller crew, your lighting setup being scaled up to the size of your crew is so important.
I'm shooting by myself, so two lights that I'm moving, I can move them quickly and I can adjust them to get the look that I want. This follows this rule that my cinematography lecturer drilled into us, which is keep it stupid simple. Don't overcomplicate your life. If you do, there's more things to manage, more things to control, and when you're just one person, that's how mistakes happen. But if you're a bigger crew, obviously you can have those bigger setups because you'll have people who are in charge of that, who are focusing on the finer details within that larger piece of the puzzle.
Day 2 of the production. Yesterday we were shooting until around midnight. I got tired, went to bed, woke up, shaved, so there's a continuity error there. Don't kill me. But yesterday we did wrap up everything around the record player that needed to be done. So I have a cup of coffee. We have to shoot the final 2 shots of the video, and we obviously have to set that up.
Now, before we can do that, we actually have to do one thing, and that is move this couch further away from the wall. And that's going to have 2 benefits. One, having any sort of object further away from the walls allows us to have more depth because there's more distance between where our subject is going to be and the background, which means it's going to go blurry, and that's going to visually cue us that there's depth in the image. And the second benefit is because my couch is currently neatly tucked in between 2 white walls, which are just, fantastic for making sure light doesn't bounce everywhere. By moving the couch further away, we're actually mitigating the light bouncing everywhere, or really diminishing it to the point where we're not going to notice that a little bit of light spill is bouncing back into the image. And so we're going to move a couch, set up some lights, and get going. So moving the couch was a little bit of an operation. I had to be careful that I didn't damage the couch while moving it because that's the last thing I want to be doing is replacing my furniture. Everything is dialed in. Let's get that wide shot and then completely change the vibe. Were you expecting the vibe to be changed once it went from black? Well, so was I, but I made a bit of a mistake. I've set up the camera and I forgot to set up one piece of equipment with the camera. But it's a perfect segue to talk about camera movement because that's one of the ways that we can tell a story. Now, everything up until this point has been static. And again, I've done that for a specific reason. But when we swap to the future, I want things to feel very different. I want things to be happening in the frame. I want there to be a little bit more life is passing you by. And so to show this visually, not only was I going to change the vibe, I also wanted the camera to start moving. But I'm shooting by myself. So one of the things that I'm going to be using is a Trexo slider that I have, and that's going to just add the movement of the camera pushing in. But it's not going to be a perfect push in. I want it to be slightly off tilted again because it's not normal for us to be so glued to our phones, and that's the idea that I want to be conveying. And so I want the camera movement to have a little bit of a off-center feel to it. So camera movement plus the vibe change, that's how we're gonna do it. And there you have it. This is the vibe change. As you can see, it's so boring, but there's one thing missing. This is still looking too warm, so let's just do a quick fit check. Open! To this gray hoodie, really devoid of everything in color. And that's just another thing that we can do as filmmakers to tell a story. I'm also probably gonna remove the hat because there's just too much warmth. So I'm just gonna go like this. Now, in terms of what we changed to get this look and feel, we changed the color temperatures of all the lights so that they're all at 5,600 Kelvin. And then we white balance the camera slightly above the white balancing of the lights. So the lights are at 5,006, that camera's at about 6,000. We removed the filter from the lens because that filter was giving us that retro, soft, warm feeling. And we didn't want that. We wanted cold, lifeless, dead, 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 dead. So with that being said, we're ready to rock and roll. Here's the final film.
Finds a way.
No, wait. Let's do that. Very quick.